Well, everyone watching at home, again, my name's Jon Wortmann. I've been working with you guys this year on stress and how to take care of you. And then when the pandemic hit, we did a special session on how to stay sane or a bit saner during this time. And I couldn't have been more excited in those 17 sessions to see how well all of you adapted. Now, that doesn't mean it was comfortable. That doesn't mean we liked it. And that doesn't mean we've solved all the issues for the future of remote learning that we'll probably have to deal with again. It means that I couldn't have been more excited to see how the parents worked with you, how you took on the challenges of being new teachers again so intentionally, and how so many of you were using the techniques, whether it was breath work or meditation or exercise or time blocks that we had taught in the fall, and then how you were really living into your values and goals, the work we did in January, as we had these conversations. The problem for all of us, though, during this time is we burn out. And what you're going to learn today is what burnout actually is. We're going to take on the things that burn us out and the signs of it. We're going to talk about a 6-item assessment that will let you figure out where you may be burning out right now. And I'm very grateful today to have Carrie and Dee and Michelle, and they're going to be doing some of these assessments with me to give you a case study. The reason they're making themselves vulnerable is not just that they are superheroes. It's that if you can't see your fellow teachers going through the struggles that we all face at the end of a year after putting our heart into teaching all year, it's sometimes hard for us to admit that we're really struggling. And the great news at the end of this, I'm going to give you 11 restorative habits that you can take on this summer. So you can be, like I said last September, the kind of teachers who look forward to September rather than June. That said, we're all going to be grateful for a break. Carrie, tell us now, what is the most memorable thing from any of the 3 workshops we did before? What are you doing that you weren't doing previously?
I'm taking time for myself. I think I missed the one in the fall, or one of them, because I was out with a broken foot for 3 months. So it was a little crazy trying to do my job and work from home and all of that. And we bought a new home in that process. So now I'm taking time to go out and garden and time for myself. And as you let me know it was okay the last time, that I take a nice hot bath every afternoon to
75
kind
to
of reset
145.
myself. Yep. So
75.
I let my husband know that was okay.
75 to 145 calories. Gardening counts as exercise. Just those changes make us more free from the regular stress stuff. How about you, Dee? What have you done differently as a result of the original work we did?
I breathe a lot more, which sounds silly, but it is true that when I am very stressed, I find that I hold my breath. Mm-hmm. I literally stop breathing, and I didn't realize that. So that's been a big deal. I've also, because I don't get a chance to actually talk to my closest friends, because my best friend lives in Chicago, and I write a lot more snail mail. So I keep very nice stationery with me at all times, and I will pull it out. And if I need a 5-minute break, I'll write another paragraph. And so and I make sure that I have cool stamps that go with whatever stationery. I mean, it's a whole production. I want it to be something cool to get in the mail, and very nice fountain pens, and you name it. That's what I do.
And you've just brought up additive theory. Is what do you add to the moment to actually restore yourself? You're doing the breath work to step back from stress, and wait until we get to that part of the program today in terms of fighting burnout. You're already doing it naturally. Michelle, how about you? What's one thing that you added to your life, or what are different now that we've done these sessions for you as a busy mom and busy teacher?
I also do the breaths and the looking away. Mm-hmm. And when I get real antsy, I do stairs in my house.
Yeah.
Because I have to move. So I just do the stairs real quick, and then I get back at it.
One last reminder for all of you at home, when we hit a half an hour here, stand up. We're not going to be able to do that during this seminar because of the work we're doing. But pull a notebook out right now, or pull up a file on your computer so you can take notes. Because I want you to be able to actually assess. First, it's going to be a word exercise. Then it's going to be some number assessment. Then we're going to do these lists of traits. And I want you to write them down. Of course, I'll send you out the outline at the end. But I want you to see which of these restorative habits are most useful to you. Because in 1974, a man named Herbert Freudenberger, one of the best names in the world, was working in New York in a clinic treating addicts. And he noticed that people started to have these symptoms. The volunteers in the clinic started to be exhausted. They started to have headaches and sleeplessness. They started to be emotionally reactive. And then something really strange happened. They became more closed-minded. The people who were so happy to be doing the work, caring for those vulnerable folks, started to not be open to new ideas anymore. And even worse, they got cynical. So, Michelle, what does a burned out person look like to you? How would you describe that person?
Withdrawn, grumpy. They maybe like perseverate on one thing and can't get out of that loop.
That's it. They're stuck on the short loop. And this is the burnout phase. That slight piercing of the eyes, the slight closing of the eyes, the pinching of the face. Everybody right now on the screen, you guys have got a half smile, right? You've got the slightly upturned cheeks. And it is when you're interested in something, when you've got a lightness to your being, when you know that you're in control, when you're on the long loop, everything opens. But burned out people tighten, tense, and you feel that in your face and you feel that in your head. And it eventually, from squeezing your teeth together too tight, causes headaches. But the reality of a burned out person is that they are not mentally ill. Burnout is the state of having different parts of your life mismatched, meaning what you do doesn't match what is most important to you, your values, the things you want to do, your goals, and the commitments you've actually made, that work we did in January. And Christina Maslach, who works at the University of California, Berkeley, said that people who are burned out are suffering from emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, which is also defined as cynicism. So what you used to do, which is like, I don't care, it doesn't matter to me anymore. And then lastly, this is so interesting for those of us who are teachers and care so much about education, a loss of accomplishment. So she found these to be the three core definitions of what burnout is. So based on those definitions, again, emotional exhaustion, cynicism or depersonalization, and a loss of accomplishment. Carrie, would you say on a yes or no, simple assessment, are you burned out right now?
No.
Right? And this is the thing. Like when I was a teacher of spiritual things, and remember I worked in the church where Grown Ups was filmed for 20 years, and it was a 1,000-person community, and we ran summer programs for kids and mission trips all over the country, cleaning up after disaster areas and rebuilding in urban environments. I got burned out every month. I would feel exhausted emotionally, overwhelmed, like the world was on my shoulders. And at a certain point, I just didn't feel, even though I was changing lives on a daily basis, like anything I did made a difference. And I could say on a monthly basis, I feel burned out if I had gotten the education I'm inviting us to think about today. No one gave me these categories. I was born in 1974, but this stuff didn't really become content that was taught everywhere until the last handful of years. And so I would burn out on a regular basis. And I would, again, eat the cheeseburgers and drink we'll talk about that later. And that mischief was the only way I knew how to cope. Even though I was exercising, even though I was doing my meditation time, I was just always feeling like what I did didn't matter. Would you say right now that you're burned out, Dee? Just that simple question, yes or no, based on the definition.
Gosh. A week ago, I would have said absolutely yes. But today, I don't think so. But yeah. I think it's just because this school year, I'm not Zooming all day, every day. I think that makes a difference.
And this is the point about burnout. Notice how you paused and you had to think about it. Mm-hmm. Your body is made to survive through so many difficult things. You can keep fighting even though life is really difficult. We know that people survive war and trauma and awful things in their life day after day. You can do it, but that doesn't mean it feels good to do it. And when you're in the short loop, you don't think, you just keep going, you just keep grinding. And so notice how quickly in just a week, you're already feeling a little relief because the pressure of the end of the year is ramping down what you have to do. Less Zoom meetings. Thank you for a little extra blue light time with me today. And then the reality that you're going to get a break. Burnout, again, let's make this opening point, is not mental illness. It's cynicism. It's feeling like what you're doing is not mattering. And it's some of those symptoms like headaches and sleeplessness. Would you say, Michelle, that you are burned out now? Yes or no?
Nope, not right now.
Not right now. So when I did this workshop originally with Tom and the superintendents of New Hampshire, it was the summertime and almost no one was burned out. But when I did this same assessment with a group of administrators in another district in the middle of the year, every single person except one put their hand up. So if you're at home right now and saying, I am feeling burned out, the reason we're doing this workshop is because you got to name it. Just like naming emotion allows you to go from the short loop to the long loop as a mindful exercise, saying I'm burned out is the beginning of the healing. You're not mentally ill yet. The problem is if you stay burned out too long, that's when anxiety, that's when depression can become a real experience in someone's life. But Professor Maslow identified 6 mismatches that happen in people's lives that can cause burnout. Now, I want you to rate after I list them on a scale of 1 to 10 at home, and you guys do this in the Zoom room too, whether you're highly in a positive way thinking about these traits, like things are good for you, or if they're really bad. 10 is the good. 10 is the bad, 1 is the good. So it's workload, control over your work, reward for your efforts, feeling connected to community, being treated fairly, and then your work matching up your values. So I'm going to ask these as a question. For instance, I have a reasonable workload, and 10 is it's totally unreasonable, and 1 is completely reasonable. And I just want you to be honest about what the number is, what pops up for you. So I'm going to ask all 6 questions now, and then we're going to go back through the Zoom room and take a little tally of where people are. So the first mismatch is workload. I have a reasonable workload. Write down 10 if it's totally unreasonable. In the middle if it's kind of reasonable. 1, 2, 3 if it's, total easy. Like unreasonable is 10, reasonable is 1. Second question, I have control over my work. Almost no control, 10. Again, that's heading towards burnout. Total control, you feel very comfortable with everything you're doing, that's a 1. Third, I'm rewarded for my efforts. So 10, few to no rewards. 1 is you really do feel like you get the value from what you do in terms of, it could be compensation, it could be time, it could be thank yous. Rewards are personal. It depends on what's rewarding to you. Number 4, I feel connected to community through my work. 10 is totally disconnected from your community. 1 is I absolutely feel connected. One of the reasons I left my church work is that I was surrounded by community all the time, but I felt more and more disconnected because I was working so hard. The 5th one is I feel like I'm treated fairly. 10 is extremely unfair treatment. As we went to remote working, some of you absolutely would have felt like either the way the parents or the kids teaching to the empty chair or the way administration was asking us to work, it just wasn't right. Again, this isn't saying whether administration, parents, or kids are good or bad. This is, did you feel like you were treated fairly? If it's extremely unfair treatment, 10. If it's very fair treatment, that'd be a 1. And lastly, my work matches up with my values. 10 is there's no match. I believe in honesty, and this is a terribly dishonest environment. I believe in relationship building, and we're not building relationships at all. And 1 is there's a clear match. I believe in integrity, and we kept our integrity up throughout this entire time. Think of the values that we did in the workshop in January and that you did with your teams. Did you get to live those out in this time? Again, we're not judging right or wrong, good or bad here. What we're looking at is, did in our year any of these mismatches occur for you? So starting with Carrie, did you feel like you have control over your work? What was your number?
1.
You felt like you had control at all times?
Mm-hmm.
How about you, Dee?
7.
7. So 1 means everything's good. By the way, if you're 1, 2, 3 on any of these scales, no problem. You do not need to do burnout recovery work on that particular mismatch. It means you're good. 7 isn't bad either. So 7 is in that high middle ground where you're just saying, I have some, and I bet we're going to find 1 or 2 more here that may be higher for you given the stress of the year. And if it's a 7, you want to say, where are those little patterns of behavior I could do different to have more control? Where could I speak up and ask for things to be different in the year? But if it was a 10 on control, I have no control over my work. You would want to get with a mentor this summer and really talk about, do I need to teach differently? Do I need to work differently with my administrator? Do I need to work differently in my classroom? Or was this just circumstantial because of Zoom land, right? Because sometimes circumstances show up that burn us out. Troops who go to war and end up having to fight, like they're burned out, but it's because they're fighting. It's not because when they leave the fight, the burnout won't go down. That's when PTSD can kick in. Separate workshop. Michelle, where are you on the control over your work?
6.
6. Again, fairly reasonable. Reward for your efforts. Where are you, Michelle?
7.
7. D?
7.
7. Carrie?
I had a 5.
5. Again, you're on the edge of it, D and Michelle, with those 7s, but rewards then would be something that you'd look at again over the summer and say, do I need more thank yous? Do I need, a different schedule, right? You have to define then what rewards are for you and say, where do you need a little more of that? I feel, let's see, I skipped one there. I have a reasonable workload. Where were you, Carrie?
I was at a 5.
5. How about you, D?
10.
10. That's honest. It's honest. Michelle?
8.
8. Okay, so 8 and 10. Now we're in that place where you're either on the edge of burnout. This doesn't say for sure. This is not a formal assessment that guarantees it, but it means there's real stuff there. And I can see in your face, D, that it's like, And you got to be honest about that. So what we have to know, if we are at an 8 or a 10 on any of these scales, 8, 9, or 10, over the summer, you've got to look at what is causing that and work with a mentor, work with a colleague, work with an administrator, give me a call, and figure out what we can do differently. Because if it stayed at an 8, 9, or 10 for too long, that's where burnout can actually happen. The way this assessment works is that if you are at an 8, 9, or 10, it's possible that you really are struggling with burnout. And what I'm going to give you for the rest of the session today is what you do with that. But you first have to be honest about where that burnout is showing up. And that's why you were saying last week, hey, not so bad. What's different this week that's making you feel a little less burned out if we ask the general question, even though we look at the workload and we go, it was too much?
Well, I'm no longer trying to chase students via email.
Right. Did the pandemic create new workload for you that you didn't expect? I know the answer to that question, but I'd love to hear why for you.
Well, I did expect it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, so even though it was high, though, it still causes you to feel like it's just too much.
Yeah.
How about you, Michelle? Workload 8. What was it? Was it the new stuff that came in, or was it just it was where the school year was? Because so many teachers I've talked to in the 4 districts I'm working with right now, workload is the big issue.
So it was a difficult year in general, but I had a very difficult time once we went to remote, separating work from home because home was work. So I'm someone who will stay at work, physically at work until 4 or 5 if I need to, and then I'm done. But then you leave it, and so now there wasn't that leaving it, and I would be sitting at my kitchen table working until it was dinner time, and that was just really hard. Yeah. And then still even working that much, feeling like I wasn't done yet.
So honest. And in both cases, you're having that level of burnout assessment that's showing there's stress here. And in one case, it's, for Michelle, more COVID related. And it's the scheduling based on working at home. And in Dee's case, there's more work going on. And it's you expected it, but it was there. Where Carrie's about in the middle. And this is the way groups normally play out. It is rare, like that one group of teachers where everybody was just so elevated, that one group of administrators. Generally, different things affect us in different ways. So community. Did you feel connected to community through your work right now? How would you assess it, Carrie?
A 3.
How about you, Dee?
7.
Yep. Michelle? Number 4 on the
5.
At a 5. Again, what we're seeing is that each of you are in a reasonable place, but D, we keep getting the elevated levels.
Mm-hmm.
And you are a case study being a bold example for all of your colleagues today to say, hey, this stuff is real. And this stuff is not where I want it to be. And that is not a negative thing. That is an honest thing. For those of you at home, if you are getting lots of 7s, 8s, or 9s, we're doing this so you can see we've got homework to do after a vacation in the summertime in terms of thinking about teaching in this environment differently or teaching in our district differently going forward. Being treated fairly. Where were you on that, Michelle? Item number 5.
4.
4. D?
Gosh, I hover around the 7.
Yeah. And you know why you hover around a 7 from what you described is that you were really cooked a week ago. And so it is coming down, but you're also showing that all of these factors are in play. And so there's a global conversation. For those of you who are where D is right now, you have to have a global conversation with your administrator and say, something's not going right. And if the administrator is not hearing it, that's when you have to bring in another colleague to say, hey, let's talk about what's really going on in our work. Because the reason we gave you shock absorbers in terms of personal care technique in the fall and in January and then in this May period is so that we could really know, hey, there's something going on beyond us. She's doing the breath work. She's doing the writing to friends. She's adding things to her life. That means there's something in the system that we need to pay attention to. Doesn't mean the system is ruined. It means that there are adjustments that are going to need to be made, but it's coming down. So it still may be COVID related. We're going to want to talk about it again in a couple of weeks. The last question is, how do your values match up? What was it for you, Michelle?
A 4.
How about you, D?
That was a 5.
Yep. How about you, Carrie?
1.
Right? So basically what we learned from this is that D is going to have a conversation with Carrie after the workshop to talk about why she's at a lower place and to go back and forth. And I give that as an example. Normally I would have you guys having these conversations as a twosome within the auditorium because you've got to have partners. You can't keep this stuff when it's real for you in your head. And we've got to find the trusted advisors in and out of the district to be able to work on this. So if you were going to pick one of these 6 mismatches to work on, which one would you work on over the summer, Carrie?
Probably work load.
Work-life balance?
Yeah.
And so mute the mic again. It got a little loud there. So yeah, so the work life we do for sure. And like literally seeing that you can get more you time. And you answered that question at the beginning so clearly. Now you're in the garden. Now you're actually taking time for you. And that may have been off camera before, but it's a fantastic thing that you can garden for exercise. You know that you can make time for you in the middle of your life. Those switches that you made over the last month or two may have taken down your burnout. Wait until I give you the new recovery opportunities in a few minutes. D, what one were you going to work on this summer?
Well, I mean, I think the 2 to work on are just, well, the work to values, because I'm not going to be, working. So I can maybe plan ahead, try to plan ahead. You can't really ever plan ahead.
No, not in these circumstances, but you can think about ahead of time what you're going to do with the workload and how you're going to change that. You can think ahead of time about the places where you need a little more community connection. And you can actually build those relationships. And that's why I'm asking each of you at home, pick one of these items that you're going to work on with a mentor, with a colleague, with your administrator, or with some outside help to be able to figure out what could be done different. Journaling, as we talked about in our sessions in May, the journaling of your negative emotions is also, in this case, the journaling for how I'm going to deal with the place I'm burned out. So in that same book, you could be writing, here are the things that I'm feeling, and then draw a line down the middle, and then right on the other side, here's the steps I'm going to try and take. Because if you don't name what you can do different, if you don't brainstorm what you can do different, you just stay on the short loop. Michelle, what are you going to work on over the summer?
Workload,
right? And it just has to be different. And sometimes we get the workload because there really is so much to do. But if it is consistently going to be there, we have to have a different conversation with how we're going to do our work. And the reason that's so important is that as we go into next year's work together, the belief is that we were going to come up with new creative solutions out of those first seminars that are going to help your classrooms be more mindful, that are going to help your students have the same techniques you do in terms of self-care. But then here, it's how do we create an environment where you're going to love teaching for the next 20, 30, 40 years if that was the gift that you were given. Now, some of you, as I said, 20, 30, 40 went, what are you talking about, Wortmann? Others of you said, that's fantastic. I want to get to that place. Regardless, to get there, you've got to know how you're going to restore the parts of that that are broken. So burnout is not the end of the story. It does become mental illness if we don't do something about it. So, Dee, how would you fix a broken plate?
I would say it depends on the plate. Probably super glue. I don't know.
Yep, that's the American practical tactical solution is super glue. Now, let's say this is an antique that falls off the wall. It's a precious plate to you, and you want to keep the plate. How would you fix it?
I'd hand it to my husband. He does everything.
and if your husband was schooled in the Japanese philosophy of wabi-sabi, he would.
Is that where you put gold?
That's where you put gold, right? So what I'm about to teach you in the next 20 minutes before we stop today is some restorative habits, a bunch of which you have heard before or are going to make sense to you, but they are the difference between being a broken plate, being a plate just put together quickly with super glue that of course still shows the cracks, versus being the kind of person who can embrace this kintsugi philosophy and you become more beautiful because your broken parts put back together are even more precious. So when the earthquake hit the island of Haiti, the center of the country and the big cities just got wrecked. And there was pottery everywhere. And in my church world, we sent service trips there to work at one of the orphanages. And the best story that I heard coming back was walking around the rebuilt walls that were cement filled with chunks of colorful pottery. That's what I want you to do today to your spirit based on these restorative habits I'm going to invite you to think about. Is I want you to think how you're going to put yourself back together and know how precious you are, because you see the brokenness not as the end, but as an opportunity to be different and make yourself better, teach better. But most importantly, let's take the broken parts of our district and do the same thing. Let's work as a community to actually figure out where we need to put some gold. Now, the method here is called additive theory. So when we talked about quick switching, that's when you step back for a moment from the stress, which gets you on the long loop. And then you can either remember something, you can switch to something you remember, like your values, commitments, and goals, or you can add something. So as I was getting ready for this talk last night, I started to stress out. And so I did my triangle breath. Upside down triangle is my favorite. And I remembered being on stage with all of you in person a couple of times in the last 12 months. And I remembered people laughing. And I remembered the din of everybody talking about these things face to face. And just going back and forth between breath work and remembering changed everything. The separate model of wabi-sabi is that you're going to do your breath work or look away or pause or chew on a lemon. And then you're going to add something to those places where you feel burned out. And the first habit I want you to think about adding that's restorative is sleep. Now, remember, sleeplessness is one of the symptoms of burnout. And people often say, well, just telling me to sleep isn't going to make it better. When I tell you why sleep is so important, it may help. And it is one of those things that when we're not getting up at 4 or 5 or 6 to commute to school, we can have a different pattern. Kids, of course, do get in the way. How many hours of sleep, Carrie, do you think a person needs to be restorative?
7.
7 is the magic number. So 7 to 9, depending on who you are, if you do not get 7 to 9 hours, your body has not had the chance to go through healing cycles, brain cleansing cycles. Literally, as you sleep, your brain cleans out the toxins, and you haven't had the chance to consolidate knowledge. So I've been working on a presentation for another organization, and for a week, I haven't been able to come up with the right answer. And as I woke up this morning, the philosophy I need to present, the outline came, and it was because I've gotten enough sleep over the last week. When I've been in my stressful cycles of giving lots of talks and traveling, it's when I have my worst sleep, but it's also when I'm not coming up with new ideas. How many hours do you think you need, Dee, to be restorative on a daily basis, you personally?
I think it's 7.
And do you feel better interesting twist here. Do you feel better if you get more, or do you feel worse?
Worse. Mm-hmm.
So for everybody, there's a magic number. 7 to 9 is what you need. LeBron James sleeps for 9 and sometimes still takes a nap. But that's the physical exertion on his body that's healing there, right? Isn't that crazy? Wouldn't it be nice to be able to take a nap every day?
Yeah.
How about you, Michelle? What's the right number for you?
It would probably be between 7 and 8.
Yep.
I don't often get that, but
No, and that's what you're trying to build in. The reason I start with sleep is because it is the easiest, even though it can be the hardest to get sometimes, it's the easiest habit to change. And sleep hygiene math is about going to bed at the same time. Put your screens away an hour or 2 hours ahead. If you're using the screen for a clock, set it before those 2 hours, and then read the book. Watching TV is okay. You're far enough away from the blue light that it's not having the negative effect. Listen to your favorite podcast. Play a game with your friend, spouse, kiddos. Now, if you got to play the game on the machine, again, create that block of time before you go to bed to just unwind. That's when the hot bath can potentially be effective. And know that you want to wake up at the same time too. So when I'm working with my athletes, my golfers, we get them on a schedule, and on the days where they have early tee times, they know when their scheduled 8 or 9 hours of sleep is. And when they have late tee times, it may change, but they've got a schedule that they get used to during the week. Second restorative habit. Do you get 72 hours away from urban environments every month? Now, do the three of you all live in the woods? I'm seeing a beautiful behind Carrie. I'm seeing beautiful green right behind you. So what they found at the University of Illinois is that people who did forest bathing, who literally go off into the woods for 72 hours, would have a change to their immune system. And not only is that more important in COVID time, when you get burned out, your immune system, because you're on the short loop and there's more cortisol in your system, isn't functioning as well. People who went out and forest bathed for 72 hours, literally a month later, these city dwellers would have 50% more of the killer cells of their immune system still functioning a month later. So where, Michelle, is your favorite place to just go out into the woods? Do you have a camp, a cabin, a retreat place? Where is it?
We have a place in Madison, New Hampshire, so the White Mountains. But I think my place is anything with water.
Yeah.
So long as I'm near water, that is peaceful to me.
And you just brought up a twist. People are like, can I forest bathe by the water? Of course you can. Forest bathing is about nature. And the woman who did this study found that she would just walk through campus and look at the trees, and it would literally change her point of view. Now, we know from our work we've all done together that that's mindfulness. That's just attending to where you are and not letting the worry or the fear or the doubt take over. The twist is there is something happening in our sympathetic relationship with nature when we engulf ourselves with it, when we surround ourselves with it. It changes our body and it is restorative. Where would be your place, Dee, to go and restore?
Well, I have a pretty big yard. I have over 10 acres. And I like to just, be on the edge of it and watch birds.
That's it.
I can never remember the names of any of them, but,
I saw a kingfisher this weekend when we were in a different part of Massachusetts on the water, and could not have been more beautiful. And just those memories are the things that you can go back. Right now we're talking about the things you add, sleep and forest bathing, but then they become the memories you can switch to when the burnout hits at other parts of the new year. Where do you go, Carrie?
My parents' house, actually, in northern Maine.
Yep. It's just, notice how you each have a place. The twist is, and we'll talk about this at the end of the day, you got to find some time to get there this summer. You got to think about the new year and think about how will you actually get there with some regularity. Monthly is the goal. Now, of course, where you live is beautiful enough that you're not dealing with what I've got in the city, where I've got to get out of Boston to get to New Hampshire. Nonetheless, forest bathing is one of those restorative additions that can change your brain. Number 3, do you breathe on purpose daily? Now, of course, I've educated all of us on the breath shapes. What is your favorite shape, Carrie?
The triangle, I guess.
Yeah. So there's your assignment. If you can't answer which one you love, over the summer, go to the Breath Shapes album that everyone was sent. If you didn't get it sent, you can write me an email at Jon@namingthestorm.com, or go to quickswitching.com online, and it's there for you, is you got to pick. Because if I didn't have the upside down triangle breath, I might have lost 30, 60, 90 minutes in performance anxiety before today. And you may say, wait a second, you do all these talks all the time. You've done tons of Zoom during this new Zoom time. It doesn't matter, because when you get burned out and tired, your brain still short loops and you get stuck. And what happens is when you stay in that stuck place, you get ruts in your brain. Your brain is plastic. It can be rebuilt. But if you do the same negative thing over and over again, your brain stays in the negative patterns. And so we need these options like breathing that you know is going to work, done when you're not stressed, to be more valuable when you are stressed. And it's got to be your shape. What's your shape, Dee?
Don't think in terms of shape. I have an app on my watch.
Yeah.
And so it'll like bump when I have to inhale, and so I don't think of anything. I just breathe. So
we are becoming cyber humans by the day. You're having technology remind you when to take the in-breath, but that's okay. Tom actually sent me a study that if you are inhaling and you look at something, you're going to remember that object. If you're inhaling and you look at someone's face, and again, through the nose, not the mouth, if you're inhaling through your nose and you look at someone's face, you're more likely to be able to tell if they're stressed, tell if they're experiencing fear. So breathing in through the nose is the new technique I'm giving you today on purpose. When you want to take in a memory, breathe in through your nose. When you want to, in a difficult situation, really read the room right, breathe in through your nose. I didn't know that. That's new data. All of this science that we're learning is going to continue to come to us to restore us from the places where we have broken. How about you, Michelle? Which is your favorite shape, or how are you breathing intentionally?
So I do yoga a lot. So I like the circle breaths.
Love it. And again, for everybody at home, keep doing some technique in the morning, at night, and then you'll have it when stress triggers during the day. Now, number 4, do you intentionally shift from stress when you notice it throughout the day? Now, I told you the story of doing it because I was having performance anxiety, or we all could do it when we're having the burnout, intense feelings that could be panic or sadness. But if you do it throughout the day, what Dr. Ford realized in Hijack is that if you do it when you shift from subject to subject, from place to place, of course, when we go from class to class on Zoom, we've asked you to get up and actually move. If you actually notice your stress level and measure, and then shift either to the breath work, the mindful thing, or living differently, one thing that you care about. So adding a little bit of compassion, or adding a hug to the person who you're walking by. Make sure you know them, or you ask for the hug first. Like, it changes everything, but you've got to intentionally shift throughout the day. So the new skill is, it's not just doing it when you suddenly notice the stress. It's either use your watch to remind you to do the breath work, or add it to your transitions throughout the day. Which brings us to number 5. Michelle's already there. Do yoga once a week. So it turns out that if you do yoga once a week, it's such a funny thing. There's so much research on it, but it lowers depression. The reason it lowers depression is because as you're doing the yoga, you're doing a form of meditation, movement meditation, and it lowers the cortisol in your body. Cortisol is there to originally get you to move, just like the adrenaline. When it stays in your body, it makes you sick. And the movement of yoga is the bunny dancing. The breathing of yoga is, in fact, using your nose to get rid of the negative stress symptoms that can be on the short loop. Do you do yoga, Carrie?
I do not.
So I'll give you a confession right now. I teach this all the time. I do yoga moves, but I have been denying my wife the chance to do yoga together for years. I'll do yoga with my golfers, but she always says, do you want to do yoga with me? I'm going to make this commitment to you that I will do yoga with my wife at least once a week until we all talk again. I got to make my commitments too. And if I don't do it, I will get her on the next Zoom, or hopefully in person, I'll play a video of her saying she did or didn't do it. So I make that commitment because, again, these restorative habits, why haven't I done it? Oh, I don't want to do that. I do my stretches. I do my exercises. I do my lift. No, it's an important thing. And as I redid the research for this work, I realized I need to do this new thing at least once a week. How about you, Dee?
I used to, and I miss it. And I stopped because I couldn't fit it into my schedule.
There is a woman named Adrienne on YouTube who has 5-minute to 30-minute free videos, and she's fantastic. And the reason I know this is because my wife is a happier person since she started doing those workouts. There are free ones out there. Do you have videos of yourself, Michelle, where you actually teach, or do you just do yoga?
Oh, no, I have a friend who's an instructor, and so we've been doing Zoom yoga every Wednesday at 6:30. And now it's later because we're both done teaching, so now it's going to be at 8.
Yep. And which is great. And everybody sort of says to me, oh, of course, do yoga. Do yoga. Just like meditation, just like exercise. If you don't do it, it doesn't change you. Which brings us to invitation number 6 of restorative ways to get yourself out of burnout. Have a purpose to your meditation time. So yoga is one option. You can get double points there. But there are 3 kinds of meditation: mindfulness, concentrative, and meta, also known as compassionate meditation. So if out of your stress and your burnout, you just want to be able to have the thoughts come and go, mindful meditation is the thing. That's just looking, listening, counting, breathing. As negative thoughts come and go, let them come, let them fade away. Concentrative meditation is more, if you're doing breath work or you're saying a mantra, that you are going to come back to that mantra. You are going to stay focused. And your intent is to let no thoughts stay in your head for more than a split second. Hear that that's more intense. But if you want to concentrate better, that's the way you actually get healthier, is do that meditation with purpose. The third kind is for empathy. So Ross Green, Tom have taught us about empathic listening and about empathic conversations with kids. We also need it for ourselves. There are people in your life who drive you crazy. And meta meditation is having a simple mantra like, I wish you peace, I wish you light. And you say it over and over again for that 10-minute meditation time. And you can visualize the person. And by the way, you'll occasionally have negative thoughts or ideas as you visualize that person. And then you come back to, I wish you peace, I wish you light. The purpose to the meditation changes the brain based on what you need. So right now, write down on your paper, which form you need more of to restore this summer. Could be yoga, could be concentrative, could be mindful, could be meta. So this next one, number 7, in terms of restorative habits, is, do you have time weekly with a supportive community? Research with nurses found that they lived longer, had lower blood pressure, if they had a supportive community. In Boston these days, they are now having doctors get together and having colleague groups where they stand up and they literally say, here's the stuff I screwed up this week. And then they do the humble bow, the namaste. And it is changing their level of happiness with their work. So whether it is a faith community, a colleague group, a book group, where is that colleague group or that group of friends that you're going to get with? And I love the idea of adding letters to the friends that are away. I would argue that counts as supportive community. Even if they don't write back, you still connected to them, right? So Carrie, where is your community that's going to take care of you?
That is absolutely something I will need to work on.
Yep. Very honest. How about you, Dee?
Well, continue to write, but I feel like during the year, my PLC is that.
Yeah.
I have a really close-knit, very wonderful little PLC. I mean, there are only 4 of us, and we get along really well, and we do that. We admit what we've messed up.
Yeah, that's right. It counts. And it may be that for the bigger PLCs that I worked with, that you guys may need to break into subgroups to do this kind of supportive work. But if you love your PLC, if you've got colleagues you love that are part of this district, then absolutely find time to get together weekly for a phone call or a Zoom. You don't have to Zoom anymore. But make that time. How about you, Michelle? What's your supportive community that's going to help you live longer?
I feel like I have a bunch for different reasons. I'm kind of a people person, so I have the work ones, I have the friend ones, I have the family ones, so I feel pretty supported.
Yeah, I love it. So we've been doing 6 o'clock cafe with the neighborhood kids here in Boston. Everybody stays apart and the adults get together. And when my wife and I were away for 3 weeks at the Cape taking care of some family issues, everybody kept texting us, when are you coming back? When are you coming back? Because we made our neighborhood our supportive community. And one of these women works in palliative care at the Brigham. And we've got a couple of teachers, one in special ed. And this is where everybody comes and the kids are playing. That's our supportive community. You can make it in your neighborhood. You can make it out of a small group or your PLC. You can make it out of colleagues, but find one for the summer. And if you know that you do it just naturally, fantastic. If not, Restorative invitation number 8 is make checklists. So you literally have to make a checklist of these things you're going to add to your life. Because in hospitals, they had less infections in the phlebotomy department when they did the checklist, less infections in surgeries when they did the checklist. And so for you, what are the things that you're going to add? Make a checklist. It could be as simple as the bath, 10 minutes exercise, and making sure that you do a little forest bathing. Whichever of these things you like, and whichever out of the other 30 habits that I gave you during the year, just put them on a list, put them on the fridge, put them on your computer, put them next to your bed so that you actually will do them. From what we've added so far to your list, what are you going to add to your checklist, Michelle?
The intentionally shift from stress and the compassionate meditation.
Love it. How about you, Dee?
Well, I think it goes with the meditation. I actually decided to start Tai Chi.
Yeah. Tai Chi is meditation. It's movement meditation, the best stuff. Absolutely love it. How about you, Carrie?
The 72 hours away, the forest bathing will be definitely an ad.
And you don't need to do big radical shifts to change your brain. So invitation number 9 to restore is small changes on a regular basis. So studies with people who are dealing with weight loss, who just made the tiniest little change to their diet, mustard instead of mayo, wheat bread instead of white bread, had long time changes. Those who fasted, yep, they would have a gain at first, and then they would go back to the same health issues. The same applies to your life. A little more breath work, just a little, once or twice a day, just 4 triangles. If you don't want to do the 10 minutes of formal meditation, 2 minutes of just forest bathing. Tiny little changes makes all the difference. Number 10, as we almost are done here, 20 minutes of exercise daily. Now remember, the 10 minutes is for stress, but over the summer, 20 minutes of exercise is for clearer thinking, the study found. So you want to add that extra 10 minutes, add 20 minutes of brisk walking. Remember, walk slow for stress relief, walk fast for exercise, or hiking up the mountains, or doing vigorous yoga, or doing any sport that you love. That 20 minutes will get you thinking clearer, which will allow you to go back and take on those 6 mismatches and figure out what you can do differently, which will allow you to go to your journal and put down your negative emotions and close the book, or open a different journal up and say, here's how I'm going to change my patterns so I don't have the same burnout next year. Lastly, and this is a tough one, go on retreat. So what I had hoped to be able to say to you when this was all planned a year ago by Tom and Patty, and we're grateful that they've put attention on this work we're doing together, is I thought we'd be able to say, hey, go to this retreat at this silent meditation practice and go to this yoga retreat at this wonderful center. You're not going to be able to do that this summer. But what you can do is you can time block a day, a weekend, 72 hours in a place that's separate to you, and go away. The reason it's so important is that if you do go away and you get away, it turns out that it raises your personal belief that things can get better. Going away from your environment, and that means leaving the kids potentially, for time away allows your brain to catch up with all the alarm thoughts. All the negativity that keeps spinning, they will come back to you in silent meditation. They will come back to you in yoga, and they will come back to you as you're watching the loons on the lake. And then because of everything we've worked on this year, you know that you can switch to a value, a goal, or a commitment, to something that you're going to remember, like a positive experience from the past, or to something that you're going to add in the next moment, like a breath shape, like a yoga move, like a half smile, looking out at that gorgeous bird. So where do you think you might go on retreat, Michelle, even though we're in this strange world? And if you had to do it in your house, how would you do it?
If I had to do it in my house, I would be on my deck or in my garden. But I guess by myself, I don't know if that's even possible.
And that's why I asked the question, because it's like people push back. I can't leave my kids. I can't leave my family. See if you can do it for 8 hours. See if you can find a day where it's possible. And I know in some circumstances it's not, and I apologize for triggering you if I went too far there.
No. It's just,
yeah.
I don't know. I could go. I mean, there's a lot of places I could go. It would just be the going.
There's the going. And that's what I want you to hear, is that it seems like it's this impossible thing, but Bill Gates and Richard Branson would go away without technology, and it changed their brain. Thoreau went away for a year even though he was only 2 miles from his house, mom was still doing his laundry, and that produced the best year of writing that he ever had. You can get away on a retreat for even 8 hours. It will change your brain, let your alarm catch up with you, and it'll show you the new things you can add restoratively for next year. What was the most helpful thing that you heard today, Dee?
Oh my goodness. I think the reminder that small changes, has lasting effects. I think that that's really, I need to hear that.
Yeah. It's the
It doesn't
tiniest
have
little
to be
thing.
huge.
It does not have to be huge, and it will have an impact because it builds new ruts. The positive things in your brain. Remember, your brain is plastic and you can change it. Carrie, what's the most helpful thing for you today?
That it's okay to take time for myself.
Love it. And don't you forget that 75 to 145 calories every 15 minutes in hot water baths. How about you, Michelle?
The idea that you need to intentionally make those shifts and build them in.
There it is. If you don't, in transitions, add the stress switching, the quick switching, it will never happen. Don't stay on the short loop. Because if we do, we end up in that place of burnout. And I hope what you realize today is that burnout is not the end of the story. And Dee is our living example of just a week away from the workload, and already it's improving. And you can see the lightness on her face when I brought it up. That smile is what all of us can do as we recover. This year, we learned about mindfulness and taking care of our brain health. We learned about our values, goals, and commitments and how to switch to them. We learned about all the different ways to stay sane in this pandemic. Lastly, thank you. Thank you for being the kind of people who care so much that you actually do get to the edge of burnout or even there. The kids and families still need you. And this summer, they need you most to be restorative and recover. So find that ways to add gold to your broken parts and recognize that you can become the teacher you want to be, who can't wait to work in September again. Round of applause to our panelists. We're very grateful to Dee and Carrie and Michelle. Thank you for all of you at home. We look forward to spending more time with you as the new year begins. Be well.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.